morning. I'm Austin Holmes, your host of the Dallas Housing Coalition's Housing for All webinar series. I'm a senior development associate at Dominium and a member of the Dallas Housing Coalition steering committee. We'd like to welcome you to this next installment of our Housing for All series, sponsored by Dominium, where we discuss whether Dallas is big and if it is truly big enough for everyone. We hope you've been enjoying these impactful one-on-one conversations we've been having with DHC members and other community leaders who are Dallas's strongest advocates for keeping Dallas affordable. Today, we are honored to have Caleb Roberts, Executive Director of Downwinders at Risk, a DHC member dedicated to taking effective action on behalf of those harmed by air pollution through education, advocacy, and grassroots organizing. Prior to joining Downsiders at Risk in 2024, Caleb led the fight against the Interstate 43 expansion in the center of his hometown, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He received his master's degree in community and regional planning from UT Austin and was co-director at Texas Housers and was a senior associate at Gap Strategies. Thank you, Caleb, for your efforts fighting pollution in North Texas. And we're excited to discuss how housing in Dallas is connected to the ongoing fight against climate change.
Yeah. Glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. So to begin, can you tell us a little bit about, what sparked your passion for urban planning and environmental advocacy, and how did you become Downwinder's second executive director in 30 years?
Yeah, it was crazy stuff. I'm a old organizer. I've been organizing, maybe not maybe I didn't know the name of it, but I've been organizing probably since grade school. My dad was an organizer, and it's just things that is in your blood. You either, have a commitment and a zeal for working with the community, and working to better things in your neighborhood, in your city, or you don't. So when you have this kind of, feeling, you just follow it and it follows you, despite any other kind of work that you do. So I got introduced to urban planning. I started organizing. I graduated college from UW-La Crosse in Wisconsin with a business degree, and I really didn't know what I wanted to do with it. I had some offers for some private companies, and it just didn't click with me. And then I got offered to be a part of this community organizing group to do some economic development, and things like that. And then I got thrust into this highway expansion fight, learning a lot about how highway expansion costs so much money, takes all these resources from the neighborhood to stop for things like transit, housing improvements, density, things that a good city needs. And I was just introduced to a bunch of these like real nerdy and hippie planners, who had all this great information. And, they sat me down. I was very curious how they knew all this stuff. They sat me down and explained to me what urban planning was. I didn't know what it was by name. I knew people did this stuff, but didn't know it was all in one house. So they told me about it, and I researched in schools and moved down to Texas to go to UT Austin, for my master's program in it. And then how I got involved with Downwinders, someone on our board, Evelyn Mayo, who's been very active in the city. We worked together when she was working at Legal Aid, and I was at Texas Housers doing housing advocacy work in Fort Worth and Lubbock and Amarillo. And she said, "I think you would really like this organization." And I didn't know much about Dallas at the time. I was mostly Fort Worth and the western part of DFW. So I wanted to take some time to know Dallas and get acquainted with politics and social life. And so I moved here in 2020, right during the pandemic. And after some years, Jim Schoenbeck, who was our executive director before, was on his way to retirement, and that transition just seemed like a good fit. And I've always interested in organizing, and all of these issues, whether it's environment, housing, transportation, economic development, they all come together. And even if you're working at it from a different side, you should all be working on the same goal. So long story, but that's how I ended up here where I am.
That's amazing. That's amazing. That's a really good path to get there, and I'm happy it all worked out and you ended up doing
Thank
what
you.
you love. Yeah.
Thank
So,
you.
from your history of fighting freeways and working at the intersection of economic development and environmental justice, how can economic development in Dallas be better structured so that communities, especially those in Southern and West Dallas, gain both jobs and clean air rather than pollution and displacement?
Yeah, I think for so long we've been inundated with one type of economic development for these communities. We look at factories and we look at kind of the industrialization of America as the only way people have been able to make money. And so we hold on to those things. Right now, Downwarders is fighting GAF and PAMCO, which are major asphalt single producers. The biggest pushback is they provide jobs, they provide all these things to as a way to discount the way that they pollute the areas around. And it is a dangerous trade-off. Like, why are we trading our 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 health for ability to work? That seems such a an outdated form of how economic development is made. But so much so that we don't think of other opportunities. We don't think of how how a lot of industries are growing and changing and the different type of businesses that can be around. For example, there are major industries, but there are not a lot of small businesses in these places that have the opportunity to grow and expand in the way that they should be able to. And I think uh, the entrepreneurialism, the kind of community connections that are necessary to grow and expand businesses in South Dallas, Southern Dallas, Oak Cliff, and these places that right now are struggling with that economic development is because we're beholden to some way of life that is no longer as relevant as it was maybe 30 or 40 years ago. And things need to move and progress. And if that trade off is always held for jobs, that's just a terrible trade off for families and people to negotiate if they want to, continue this their livelihood for a long time.
Got it. That's really interesting because it is a conundrum and you see it all the time. I mean, you boiled it down pretty simply. Health for jobs, is that a trade we want to make?
Yeah,
And so are you saying that you feel as though if we look to the future and we look at other ways to be creative, you don't think that's a trade we need to make anymore? You think that areas can get health and jobs?
yeah, yeah. I think for one, Darwin isn't, and I'm not anti-job or anti any factories. We need a lot of these factories
Yeah.
to run our world. So I want to make that clear. I want to say we've positioned a lot of these factories in these communities
Hmm.
where there's urban planning would say there's a better way to co-locate these uses that are not near neighborhoods.
Mm,
But since
okay.
they're near neighborhoods right now, we don't see as, hey, maybe we can put all the concrete batch plants in the area where they can get to their jobs that are not located near residential communities. And that is an urban planning feat that we need to accomplish.
Hmm.
And we need to enforce. It needs to be planned and then enforced by city council. But right now, it feels like we need to hold on to them
Yeah.
because they're the only like they're being considered as the only way people can get jobs, and that's not true. We need a lot of better things. We need that area where these factories can exist. We also need transit and transportation that is that gets people out to those jobs, back
Yeah.
home to a safe neighborhood and environment. I just think it is the joining of both residential and industrial that people feel like they need to hold on to, and that's not the thing they need to hold on to. And other things can take place in the neighborhood, like small businesses, grocery stores, mom and pop restaurants, things like that, that will pop up if industry does leave those areas.
Got it. So it's trading those places within the residential communities now that are polluting for
Definitely.
smaller businesses, and then trying to co-locate those things in the residential areas that are polluting into
Exactly.
other
Exactly.
areas that are more industrial focused, and can have that. Yeah, no,
Definitely.
that is a complicated and challenging task. Yeah, no, that
It
is
is.
because it's you have existing zoning and you have how people go
Yeah.
and it's not always so quick that a the local businesses or the mom and pop just kind of rush in and it's been a smelting factory for decades, and
Yep,
we can put a grocery store there, and so that's a really challenging task. So I really commend you for tackling that.
for sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It definitely keeps things interesting. I'll say that. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. So Downwinders at Risk has led efforts like Shared Air DFW and the Joppa Environmental Health Project to monitor particulate matter levels and their effects on historically marginalized communities. As you
mhm,
integrate air quality data and zoning advocacy, why are transportation and housing policy reforms important to prevent future environmental injustices?
right. So, just on that point, I think the issue sometimes with industrial zoning isn't just one industrial facility.
Yeah.
It's what happens is once something becomes industrial, it begets other industry to come in. If I'm
Yeah,
getting
if they
semi
want to
trucks,
co-locate, like you said,
yeah, yeah,
they've
yeah,
chosen that area now.
and we get a lot of spectators and purveyors from different worldwide who want to come to DFW, specifically Dallas, to do business.
Yeah.
So when you get an industrial center, it signals that other people, hey, maybe I should bring my
Mm.
industrial facility there. On the other side, conversely, residential and commercial uh, builds neighborhoods. Where residential and commercial are, you want people to be.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily just the land use you see and the zoning change you see. It's what they signal to people outside developers about what is happening here. So when you see a big swing, like an area change and multiple parcels turn industrial or
Yeah.
multiple parcels turn in residential or commercial, you're signaling to that area what's about to come. So zoning changes for us are important because although we're trying to zone out industrial, we're trying to compete with a market to say that this is a residential and commercial area where people and neighborhoods need all of these things to survive. And if you don't set that standard,
Hmm.
industry views that as an area that is for them. And the type of infrastructure you need for both of these uses are totally different. You need nice wide streets for semi trucks that
Yeah.
don't feel good for pedestrians.
Mm.
They have a different weight limit that you can put for a regular car versus semi truck, and how that exacerbates our infrastructure issues. All
Yeah.
of these things have financial problems for neighborhoods, communities. So we have to look at these are competing interests, and even one of these uses can turn the tide on what's happening in the community.
Mm.
And that's why zoning is so important because you have to signal to people what is the future outlook of this area. And developers are looking 20, 30 years into the future to try to
Yeah.
stay ahead of the game. And if we're not playing that game as community advocates, we're going to be always reactionary. And that
Yeah.
is just a dangerous position to be in. Very
Definitely.
dangerous and harmful to neighborhoods.
So I guess that raises the question then, you did say that, there's obviously a need for industrials somewhere.
Yeah.
You essentially have to, maybe it's not the right word, but essentially sacrifice an area, or like what's your thought on that? Because obviously there's, we can in a perfect world, there's no industrial near any residential and everything's separate and great. But it sounds like you kind of need to essentially make a choice that, especially with what you're saying about the signaling to other developers, sounds like you
Yeah.
need to kind of make a choice. Hey, this is going to be a industrial area, and then things will kind of co-locate around that. Is
Yeah.
that your thought?
Yeah. And I mean, we've already done it. The concept of the inland port is exactly that.
Mm.
So I want to say, as a planning device, this is not immediately industry moves to one place
Yeah.
overnight. This is an overtime kind of conversation.
Hmm.
And so it does get a little messy about what parts are best for that. But I want to say that Dallas is already doing that with the inland port, and that is a conversation about how do we make a place that is specifically to produce our goods and services, um, that is not always clean, that's not always
Yeah.
friendly to outside areas, but that does allow you to do things like buffer zones, like ways to separate an industrial, port that
Yeah.
is specifically, to do the dirty work of the city,
Yeah.
and then how do you transition out into other things? So I think this is something you look over 10 to 20 years about how you transition the area out. And I think the way that we used to do that in the past was, what neighborhoods do we not care about
Yeah,
because of
exactly.
redlining, racism, all those things. That's how we made those decisions before. So,
Yeah,
if we look at it just from a purely planning perspective, I think we can find ways to co-locate those things. And we
yeah,
are on the pathway to do that. It's just the previous ways that we
yeah.
analyze these things had none of those considerations in it. So I think there's a lot better kind of decision making processes that we can put in place to figure out how to co-locate those things.
That makes sense. I mean, yeah, that's exactly kind of how I was thinking. It's almost like, the industrial folks and the folks making these decisions on the planning side, they kind of did share, exactly what you're saying. There's very much an acknowledgement that, hey, this isn't the best thing to live around, and that we
Yeah.
should probably co-locate industrial, and we should probably, put the wider streets and everything needed for industrial in one place.
Hmm.
But it's the issue is simply that they said, okay, well, let's just put it in the red line place. And
Yeah.
that, and
Yeah.
then,
Yeah.
and so then that's what created the physical environment that we're dealing with and trying to advocate for today. So
Yeah, and I want to say just on that point because it's something I like to point out about redlining. The term undesirable, like
mm,
for for people, especially Black and Latino people in this city, the term undesirable meant them, but
yeah,
also meant industry. So that is
yeah,
how you get both of these
yeah,
things together. So if you think of redline, a community that an area where we don't see people growing is exactly where, as a business owner of a factory, you could get a loan to operate. So this
yeah,
is very much facilitated by the banking industry and who's giving out loans. We're not going to give you a loan for an area we think is residential, but
yeah,
we'll give you a loan for the undesirable area because that is quote unquote kind of like a zoning designation of
yeah.
where you need to be. So that undesirable, that red line, also as much as we're talking about people, we're also giving a green light in that red zone for industry.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it really, I'm always working real estate and very fascinated with it, but it's always amazing to just see how, the decisions of the past just
For
continue to,
sure.
cause, ramifications way down the road, decades down the road, because, yeah, that's
Yeah.
just, that's kind of how it goes. You don't need to redline an area if it's now considered undesirable, or the income's already lower, and the and
Yeah.
the cost of, the wealth in the area is already lower. Now you don't need to do there's no need
Yeah.
for it. We already did
Work
what
is done.
we're trying to do,
Yeah.
and so
Work
yeah,
is done. The work
yeah,
has been
work
done
is
already.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, can you speak a little bit about, just the transportation aspect to all of that, and kind of how your advocacy
Yeah.
ties into that?
Yeah. I think transportation is one of the things I studied most when I was in planning school because I'm fascinated with how people move around the city.
Mm,
Um, the fact that we have something we were talking about Joppy, the fact that you have Joppy that is 10 minutes from downtown, basically, and the way and pathway that folks have to, if you don't have a car or if you do have a car, have to get around the city to get to downtown is just
mm,
is a barrier.
yeah.
And it's not easy to get somewhere that should be in a greatly planned city, should be very simple to get downtown, very simple to move about your community, and it's not. And so a lot of it is, this is not just a Dallas thing, but Texas reliance and the U.S. reliance on cars.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
because we're so car based, that becomes the mode of investment, and just investing in car infrastructure is just so expensive. It
Yeah.
takes away everything that you can do otherwise to move people around. It's just getting to a point where it's not manageable. All
Yeah.
our infrastructure is failing, not because we don't understand it, it's because it's so costly to keep that level of infrastructure up. So we don't have good transportation systems. It's really hard to improve things like housing. It's really hard to connect people to these jobs and access. Like it becomes very difficult to do the things that a good planned city can do. So even as I'm saying, co-locate the industries over here, if there's no way to get to your job,
Yeah. Exactly.
like then we're just multiplying issues here.
Mm,
So all of these things have to be done together. I would say mostly is we do have to invest in other forms of transportation, mainly because car infrastructure will just not sustain us. We're gonna be in debt. We're not gonna be able to sustain. These projects take 15 to 20 years to complete, and they just restart after they're done. It's very much so just uh not sustaining. The
Yeah,
sustainability of car infrastructure is very low, but it's very hard. People's mindset are built around cars. But we have to have other modes of transportation in order to connect people who are in neighborhoods that are close by to things that are around, or else we won't have the kind of vibrant communities and vibrant city that we want. I think that's a lot of some of the issues with like downtown and Deep Ellum and
yeah.
all these areas is people do not have great access to them that should have great access to
Yeah. No, that's huge. I mean, I'm from the East Coast originally, and it's really amazing watching
them.
different cities and knowing different cities. It's like
Yeah,
you can basically predict how sprawling it is by how much of the development happened after the mass adoption of the car. And then you
yeah,
can and then it's laid out right there pretty clearly because they,
definitely,
that's how different cities are built. So it is
definitely,
very difficult for a place like Dallas to really reduce its reliance on the car. So that's really
definitely,
interesting that you bring that up. Um,
definitely.
after Forward Dallas 2.0 was adopted, including separate sections on the environment, housing, and economic development, we are now looking ahead to updating Dallas's development code. How can we ensure this new comprehensive land use vision plan doesn't exist on paper, but it actually delivers healthier, more sustainable neighborhoods? So how do we actually execute on some of our lofty goals there?
Yeah, I'm gonna say the hardest part about being a planner is a lot of your best ideas go and sit on a shelf somewhere.
Mm,
And that is why I continue to be an organizer. Um, because you can't the change, although it happens in this detailed planning way, the change is made from people,
yeah.
you know, talking with the city officials, you know, being
Speak
loud,
blue.
being passionate about what's going on, and staying on top of city decisions.
Hmm.
Because usually what happens, you pass something, and then is the city council, is city officials going to stand on the thing that was actually passed, or will they kind of renege on some of the decisions that they made? And that takes a broad-based coalition of people who are watchdogging a situation, who have organized for
Yeah.
these changes in the first bit. So we always have to organize. The answer is always how do you get success, maintain success. Organizing is the key, even if planning and good policy is the tool. So what I'll say on that is the zoning code has a lot of ability to rewrite how Dallas operates.
Mm.
Dallas has a very complicated code, figure. Very complicated, not very friendly. If
Yeah.
you aren't steeped into Dallas history with development, it can take you years to develop something. It
Yeah.
can take you
It
years
does.
to build
Yeah.
something. And we have to make this simple where lay people can understand what they're allowed to do, what the city wants them to do. And we also have to clean up some of the things that, we have in the community, like the connection between industrial and residential communities. Those are things that we haven't updated in so many years
Yeah.
that we are far beyond or behind kind of what is present day best practices. Um, so this zoning code can do that. If the comprehensive plan is kind of the map or guideline of what we want to do,
Yeah.
the zoning code is definitely the vehicle to get it done. And so it's very much more detailed, specifically how these different land use codes or land use designations, zoning designations operate and the stipulations in them. Um, but I think the key thing is how do we get this to stick? Is we have to organize and we have to stay on top of it. Discussions like this as we're going through these zoning code updates are critical because I think all facets of progressive Dallas, people looking at the future of Dallas need to be intertwined about what are some good policies that we can all back. So I'm looking forward to that. I know the process is going on and probably will go on for another year or so.
Yeah.
But I think this is an even more key part of the discussion as we got through 4,000.
Definitely. Oh, I fully agree. And it's a good reminder for folks that, it's all about really actually organizing and making your voice be heard because, you don't want it to sit on that shelf,
No, no,
and
and it can, and it will.
yeah, yeah.
A lot of great plans are sitting in them city shelves right now.
Yeah.
That would have solved a lot of this years ago.
Definitely, definitely. Okay. Well, so looking ahead, you've described winning freeway fights as a kind of whack-a-mole victories that need continuous defending. What
Yeah.
combination of grassroots organizing, tactics, policy advocacy, and public-private partnerships will be most critical for Dallas to not only retrofit highways like I-345, but also to rebuild our transit and housing systems to serve all demographics equitably?
So I I just want to start with the whack-a-mole part of
Yeah.
this. The problem is politicians change
Hmm.
all the time. City, regional, state, federal, they change, they swap out. And you have to protect against bad ideas.
Hmm.
Bad ideas pop up everywhere. The problem for us is as organizers, we change too. We move on, we go through things. Where do the progressive ideas stay? And it's a conversation I've had just a few days ago about like, especially my generation. I'm born in '93. Like we like to move around jobs. We don't like to stay at one place. We
Yeah.
like to be free. And I support all of that. But how long does it take to see something through and
Hmm.
hold a change?
Yeah.
Like there have to be things that you're committed to long term because that's how long they take to see it through and to see
Mhm.
justice prevail. And that is just not necessarily spoken to us as younger generations of people as we're looking for these progressive changes.
Yeah.
How long are you committed? Are you willing to stay in the fight 7 to 10 years to see
Mm.
something through, not just the win, but the sustainability of that win? And we have to start thinking on that term. And that's kind of what I was talking about is like a developer will think 20 years in advance about a neighborhood, buy
Yeah.
some property that won't be valuable for 7 to 8 years.
Yeah.
What what piece of the good idea pie are we buying right now and holding on to,
Mm.
even though it may not be ready for some years?
Yeah.
And I say that because a lot of the good policies that we create, we win them, and then we're off. We're doing other things. And it's not about people stopping their lives, but it is how are we creating sustainability in our good organizing work?
Mm.
And that's really hard to do. Most of us are volunteers. Most of the people who help are volunteers, and life comes up, life happens.
Yeah.
But if we're not invested in sustainability, we can't stop the bad ideas from popping up. And every 4 or 5 years, you'll hear the same idea that you heard. If you stay
Yeah.
in this
Oh,
long
we
enough,
just did this, man.
yeah, if you stay in this long enough, and I think that's why a lot of older organizers and activists are so, uh, just wired differently
Yeah.
because they've heard the same bad ideas
Hmm.
over and over again, and it's just a cycle. But we have to create our own positive sustainability cycles, and we have to have policy that's ready when things are advantageous that we know that we can execute on and we
Yeah.
can stand on it. And that's just we have to rethink of how we think of jobs and
Yeah.
our flexibility there
Yeah.
versus our communities, our neighborhoods, our livelihood, our families. That needs your time. That needs your long term commitment. That needs sustainability, and we have to find a way to negotiate both. As a generation that's just used to getting up and moving halfway across the country like I did,
Yeah.
So speaking to myself on that as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, I did the same, so I get it. Do you have any examples, either the positive or negative of kind of what you described, either, things that were bad ideas that y'all had to stomp out and that you were successful in that, or things that were actually good ideas that were sustainable that you kind of were able to replace one of the bad ideas with, anything like
Well,
that?
I use highway expansion in both as two examples of what happened.
Mhm.
So first in Milwaukee, I-94 was a $3 billion, well, ended up being a $3 billion expansion project that the state of Wisconsin was, when I was advocating, was run by Governor Scott Walker, who was you know, just you can go read on Scott Walker if you never heard about him. Interesting guy. but had this like inclination to support highway projects.
Hmm.
And, the fight, we built a coalition of public health advocates, urban planners, like research groups, um, transit riders, bus drivers, who all view this issue as we don't need to expand the highway. We need better transit infrastructure.
Yeah.
And in a few months, we were able to win a halt of that project.
A
Scott
halt of
Walker,
that project.
yeah, the Scott Walker said, "Hey, we don't have the political will to get this done. We're going to halt it." Thought
Wow.
that was a win. We elected, which we thought would be a helpful, a Democratic governor, Governor Evers, who's still the governor right now,
Yeah.
thinking that this issue would not be a problem, at least while he's in office. And sure enough, he restarts that process.
Mm.
And I moved away at that time, but I still get emails from the coalition that we formed, and it
Yeah.
was it was just eye opening that they just never thought that this would be an issue under the governor that we thought would be supported.
Yeah.
So that's also like even the people that you support to put in office, you still have to keep eyes and tabs, and you still
Yeah.
have to organize and push them to do things.
Yeah.
Conversely, here in Dallas, with the
Mhm.
345 work that I've been involved in, some of the same metrics, some of the same bad analysis of why we need highways
Mhm.
um, happen here. And the data's old. The environmental, the environmental analysis is skewed. They will do anything to state that we need this type of expansion.
Yeah.
And in Texas, I'm under no uh, kind of mystique that people support the other side of it. Most people are pro highway.
Yeah.
Um, but the city of Dallas at one point decided that they would consider removal. So
Mm.
there was this like opportunity for a win, but
Yeah.
you'll see that from the state level to the regional level, the conversation around this highway is we don't care what we have to say. We're going to get this thing built.
Yeah.
We're going to get this thing built. It's going to be more money than you can ever imagine. It's a just more than a mile stretch of highway, and it's going to cost you a ton of money. But
Yeah.
we're going to tell you that there is no way that we can't do this.
What's the strong political motivation behind that? What's the driving force to like we need to get this highway built?
Well, just in my view, I'll say this: the road builders are a very strong union,
Okay.
very very strong union, and this is their job. This is what they do.
Hmm.
Also, changing a course of Texans in their car. Highways are like an American, like a white picket fence
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
two kids and a dog kind of
Yeah.
feeling. Like, what do you mean? What are we without highways? So
Yeah.
you're also dealing with that is there's generations of people who are born out who just always grew up with highways. So
Yeah.
it seems like just as natural as a river or something like that
Yeah.
when it's not. Um,
Hmm.
and so a lot of those factors play in together.
Hmm.
And the moment you start, I mean, we're in Texas, the oil and gas industry. Like, there's a lot of forces that
Yeah.
support needing these highways to
Yeah.
continue the way Texas has worked for years. And even when you consider something else, there will be a lot of pushback because people don't have a good vision of what
Yeah.
that area would look like with no highway.
Mm.
And that's hard for us to do because how do you vision something that no one has seen here in
Yeah.
America?
Definitely.
So there's a lot of more details I can go with that, but I'll say even on the 345 front, as we know some of those policies are bad, and we know some of the data is 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 not necessarily signaling that we need to expand that highway. Those projects will keep going forward because that is
Mhm.
the will of the state and will cost, the Texas taxpayer a lot of money. And it doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon.
Gotcha. Wow. This is really interesting, man. I really appreciate you giving this info. Is there anything we have not had a chance to discuss today that you'd like to highlight for our audience?
Yeah, there's some things like right now, Downwinders is starting a campaign, they call it Fund the Fund campaign, really around the removal of GAF and TAMCO. TAMCO is an asphalt single producer in Joppy. GAF is an asphalt single producer in West Dallas. And this campaign is really focused on what I was talking about before, is the deindustrialization of these
Mhm.
residential communities. And the fight right now is about a lot of things. There's pushback because GS and Tamco are major businesses, and we want to hold on to these businesses because they
Yeah.
provide jobs. But both of these companies have been in these communities for over 50 years.
Mm.
And at what point, who has to pay the cost for the type of jobs that we want? Why
Yeah.
do these communities have to pay the help costs for the jobs and things that we want? So if you are interested in that fight, we are going to be pushing the city budget process to deal with some of these issues in a very we found some ways that the city can remove these uses today,
Mhm. Mhm.
tomorrow, by the end of the budget cycle. So if you want to be involved in that, you can go to downwarders@risk.org, sign up for our newsletter. We're going to have ongoing meetings about this. But I think the overall point is we are we are one of the main groups trying to pull apart this long and tangled history. And when you get in this fight, you'll see a lot of different sides of how people are positioning themselves to understand what's best for Dallas. And our question always is, why are the same communities that have historically had to deal with the issue still being told, we need you to deal with this issue so we can all prosper the way we want to prosper?
Yeah.
And when is enough? You know,
Mm.
how long do people have to deal with it till it's enough? Or are they always into perpetuity supposed to deal with the issues so we can have the goods and services that we want all across Dallas? That
Yeah.
is kind of the friction going on here, and it's a friction that's been happening for generations
Yeah.
since
Yeah.
Dallas was became Dallas. And so I'm excited to always bring people a part of that.
Mhm.
Also, even if we're successful, we're going to need connections with the Housing Coalition and other good people to what do you do after that? What is a good neighborhood? We still have to be invested in not just the removal of things, but how do we build strong neighborhoods that are good for the city, but also and definitely respect the community and where they are at today. So uh, those are the things that Downwinders is still a part of doing. It's happening right now. Things that everyone can be a part of, and kind of is a synergy of all these different urbanism
Yeah.
and progressive ideas that Dallas needs to accept.
That's really cool. That's really cool. Caleb, thank you. Thank you for
Yep,
joining us this morning, and thank you for all the work that you're doing behind the scenes to
yep,
make Dallas a better place to live. We really appreciate it.
definitely, definitely. Thank y'all. Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate being here.
Of course, of course. So before we sign off today, we encourage you to attend the Dallas Housing Coalition's next event. It's going to be at 6 p.m. from 6 p.m. to 7:30 on Tuesday, August 12th, as we host author and National Zoning Atlas founder Sarah Brahman on her book tour. Follow us on social media for more updates and stay connected here with our Housing for All webinar series. Visit us at dallashousingcoalition.com to subscribe to our communications and get involved by joining Downsiders at Risk or Downwinders at Risk as a member of the coalition today. We really appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in to this Housing for All webinar series where we discuss whether Dallas is big and if it is truly big enough for everyone.